Introducing Canada's game-changing Intercity train, which includes new features and comfort not previously seen in the country, if not the entire North American continent. I'll be spending just over 5.5 hours on this sleek modern Siemens Venture train set, travelling from Canada's second largest city Montreal down to its largest Toronto, as we check out just what may be the nicest intercity train in North America. Now join me as the journey continues. Bienvenue à Montreal Gare Centrale, Montreal's main railway station, which has been on this site since 1943. Safe to say though, it doesn't have the most grand of entrances compared to other major railway stations in Canada, with you having to navigate a car park to get into the main building, but it's much nicer inside, as we'll see shortly. One thing you'll immediately notice upon entering the station are the classic Art Deco friezes at both ends of the main hall, which I quite like and really gives a good ambience when passing through. Gare Centrale sees 11 million passengers every year, making it the second busiest railway station in the whole of Canada, so naturally you'll find plenty of shops, restaurants and other essential and non-essential amenities ahead of your journey. Services here are mixed. EXO, Greater Montreal's commuter rail operator, has its own dedicated platforms here for various services across the area, with local Montreal metro connections here as well. But probably one of the more notable modes of transit here is the fairly new REM, an automated light metro that runs from Brossard to Deux-Montagnes, a new extension which opened a week after I visited Canada. Maybe one for me to check out on my next visit? Anyway, I stayed with family whilst in Montreal who have easy access to the REM, so getting here was no issue. A huge thanks again to them for hosting me during my stay. Most services here though are operated by Canada's national railway Via Rail, as seen by the ticketing and luggage facilities here, the latter of which being useful for checking bags through on Via Rail's long-haul sleeper trains. We however are instead taking Via train number 63 to Toronto, departing at 0846 from platform 13. Boarding on Via Rail only commences 30 minutes before departure, though I arrived early to check out the business lounge here in Montreal, accessible with my business class ticket. The lounge is very well used. Montreal is a key station on Via Rail's Quebec City to Windsor corridor network that accounts for 67% of Via's revenue, so this is to be expected. Everything here is complimentary with the access, including the coffee, snacks, and even the extensive soft drink selection. Overall, it's a very decent space and is much better than that of most European lounges. Well done, Via Rail. The boarding process is where I start to get annoyed with Via Rail services in general, and this trip was no exception. Our boarding was slightly delayed, and even when we could leave the lounge to board the train, we had to wait in a queue for quite a while before being let onto the platforms. I even overheard a passenger being told to weigh their luggage and place a few items elsewhere as they exceeded the weight limit. This isn't Via Air Canada. Anyway, after one quick ticket check later, we're now let onto the platform, and here it is, Canada's newest intercity train. Via Rail has ordered 32 200km/h capable Siemens Venture sets, which are almost identical to the sets used by Brightline and Amtrak in the US, with a number of key differences. Each set features an SCV-42 Charger diesel locomotive at one end and a control car at the other end which resembles the locomotive, being better designed for Canada's harsh winters and includes a number of interior differences as we'll see later. The Ventures are derived from the Siemens Viaggio Comfort platform used in Europe, a common example being the Austrian Railjet. Via Rail ordered these sets to replace the aging coaches on its flagship corridor services, some of which date back to the late 1940s. My original booked set to Toronto was actually meant to be the LRC coaches from the 1980s, but by the time I actually arrived in Canada, Via had pressed most of the Ventures into service across its network, with only a small handful of the old trains remaining, but not to worry. Videos of those will be out soon. Each of Via's Venture sets is typically formed of 5 coaches each, but Via is able to adjust the configuration of these depending on demand, as seen here with 2 3-car sets at Via's Toronto maintenance facility. One set has also been placed in an all-yellow colour scheme and named Lumi, in a nostalgic reference to the historic turbo train and symbolising modernisation for Canada's passenger rail. These trains are also suited for the different platform heights present at Canadian stations. Retractable steps are available for low-level platforms typically seen across most of the Canadian railway network, whilst there is also a shutter for higher platforms like those seen in Montreal, with platform ramps provided for level boarding, as was the case with the old trains.
Call one, yes. Thank you so much.
In a typical 5-coach venture formation like ours, business class makes up 2 carriages, and my first impression is incredible. You can easily tell a lot of thought went into the design, and it provides a much more modern and welcoming feel than Via's older coaches. This is laid out in a 2x1 configuration with primarily airline style seating, but a few table seats as well. Via have also introduced a privacy pod concept which is bookable for groups or meetings, but this went unoccupied for the entire trip, so want us to wonder how many people actually use it in reality. You can select your reserved seat on the Via Rail website for an additional fee, and I selected 13D, a forward-facing window seat for the journey to Toronto. For today's journey, most of our stops will be in Ontario, though we do stop in Dorval just outside of Montreal. After crossing into Ontario, we run alongside Lake Ontario for the remainder of our trip down to Toronto, where we're expected to arrive at 14:18. Our Via Rail venture set taking 5 hours and 32 minutes to cover a distance of 539 kilometres or 335 miles. We depart Montreal on time at 08:46 as we sit back, relax and enjoy the surprisingly amazing weather towards Toronto. As we cross the St. Lawrence River shortly after leaving the station and having to endure overhearing the emergency exit demonstration, the onboard service begins in business class. This includes drinks as well as a meal, with both served using a trolley, though the latter will come later in the trip. Via also has a menu for economy class passengers, which I've of course linked in the description below. For now though, I just went with a glass of water. I'm really loving the Via branding on the glass.
Your attention please. We'll be stopping in Dorval in approximately 10 minutes. Si vous vous rendez à l'aéroport international Pierre-Éliott Trudeau, vous devez descendre à cet arrêt.
We continue through Montreal's urban sprawl for around 15 minutes and soon enough arrive into Dorval, our last stop in the province of Quebec. This is also the closest railway station to Montreal's Trudeau International Airport, as shown by the plane in the background, which is connected by a local shuttle bus. The REM is expected to be extended to the airport in 2027, so getting to the airport from central Montreal will soon be much easier. After leaving Dorval, we cross Lake St. Louis towards Ontario, and now's a good time to divert our attention to the train's interior. The venture sets in general don't have the most comfortable seats ever, but the Via ones are by far the best. The padding and comfort is great for a new train, and the winged headrest and soft adjustable cushion are great. Also note the black Via logo to indicate business class. Nice touch. Both sides of the seat have foldable and well padded armrests, and at the base of the seat is a lever for operating the manual recline, which I found to be pretty generous, especially compared to a certain high-speed train across the border. One area I have to fault these trains though is the legroom. As seems to be a recurring theme with Siemens, the support bar at the base is in the way and can restrict your ability to stretch out, which is rather disappointing. I also find it a bit strange how the footrest blocks the seat back pocket, especially as it contains vital safety information in case of an emergency. One great thing about these coaches though is that there are more than enough power sockets at each seat. Case in point at the solo seats where there are 2 sockets for 2-pin plugs, as well as 4 USB-A sockets in total. The one by the window side is also next to 2 cup holders, which is good use of the larger loading gauge in North America in my opinion. On that note, the tray tables here in business class are very large and much better to deploy than Via's old fleet. They're even extendable too. Coat hooks are located on the window side of the seat in front, with grab handles being on the aisle side. Below the overhead luggage racks are reading lights, and finally, draw-down blinds are available to reduce the glare, though putting it back up proved to be a challenge. Luckily, the attendant was on hand to help to resolve the situation. Okay, so it's not a perfect interior, but man is it a significant difference and improvement to Via's legacy coaching stock. This is even better than most European trains, which is really saying something. We're now continuing along the corridor route, and I have to say the ride quality of these sets is very good, definitely better than the older trains. Whilst these sets are capable of reaching 200 km per hour, Via doesn't run them at these speeds on corridor services due to track quality and infrastructure constraints, so we instead settle for reaching speeds of 160 km per hour, which is still a marginal increase of the previous 150 km per hour speed restriction on the older corridor fleet, so will slightly improve trip times. We're now arriving into Cornwall, which is our first stop in Ontario, and as the easternmost city in the province, sits where Ontario, Quebec, as well as upstate New York in the US converge. The city is named after the English Duchy of Cornwall and is one of Canada's oldest settlements. The attendant then came back with an offer of further drinks as well as a lemon drizzle cake, and I went for the orange juice this time. For all that can be said about Via Rail's airline style practices, their staff sure provide a great onboard service. It's also worth mentioning at this point that the Venture sets are equipped with fast and free 5G Wi-Fi, which is very easy to connect to and is not only useful for watching YouTube videos from your favourite creator, but also for checking the journey progress on the Via Rail Journey Tracker site. Nice stuff! The attendant then came around with warm towels that were given to us just before arriving into Brockville. This is a major junction station not only for services between Toronto and Montreal, but also for Ottawa services which diverge to and from the tracks just next to us here. Something Via Rail did with their legacy sets, which they're continuing to do with the Ventures, was combine services from Toronto to Montreal and Ottawa together, which would split and join at a junction just outside of Brockville, depending on the train's direction. An example of this can be seen with Lumi and another Venture set departing Oshawa. After Brockville, our meals are served. Via gives you the option when booking to select dietary meals such as halal, kosher or gluten-free, and I went for the halal option of chicken and rice with bread, salad and a coconut chocolate for dessert. Despite the airline style presentation, it was pretty good. The food is stored and heated in the kitchen area here at the front end of the business class car, as are the alcoholic and non-alcoholic drink options. Now let's have a look at economy class, which is from the third coach onwards. This is laid out in a 2x2 configuration and like business class features a mostly airline style seat layout with a few tables here and there. The main difference to business being the narrower seats and of course the lack of complimentary food service. The Via logos in this class are also the standard yellow as opposed to black. I did travel in economy several times during my Canada trip and it's honestly a pretty good option. Certainly for the journey lengths these trains do. The legroom is great and the seat comfort is pretty decent, especially for a brand new train. Another thing that impressed me was the wheelchair accessible space on board. 2 are present on the train with the one in business class shown here. It's very clear that accessibility has been a key factor in the design of Via's Venture sets, and the features such as the adjustable table sections and tip-up seats are a massive uplift compared to Via's old fleet. There's also a built-in power-operated lift in the accessible carriages for stations with lower platform heights. There are also 3 PRM specified toilets in a 5-car Via Venture, which unlike the US Venture sets have curved door profiles. When travelling with Via Rail whilst I was in Canada, I never really had any issues with cleanliness and the space in here is pretty large, so can't go wrong there. The remaining 2 toilets are standard toilets, and whilst I was in the business class one, I noticed that there was a display screen not only listing our journey progress, but also our operating speed. You know, because who doesn't want to see how fast we're going whilst in the toilet? Another major change compared to the old Via fleet is that overhead luggage space is the standard racks instead of bin lockers, with there also being large luggage racks in the vestibules. Some of these also double as bike space by folding away the section here, which is a smart design. Perhaps my favourite feature though is that in the control car vestibule there's a sensor operated water refill point which is free for anyone to use. Whilst we do have this on Avanti West Coast back home in the UK, I'd love to see more of this in mainland Europe. The attendant came back with a chocolate truffle after Belleville to round off the meal. They're certainly generous with the food here. We also catch a glimpse of Lake Ontario before making a stop at Coburg, and after departure we cross the Port Hope Bridge over the Ganaraska River, which feeds into the lake. This eventually comes into full view on the left-hand side towards Toronto. Lake Ontario also spans upstate New York in the US and is one of the 5 Great Lakes of North America, the last in the chain that serves as the outlet to the Atlantic Ocean via the St. Lawrence River. I really lucked out with the weather on this trip, with spectacular views of the lake. What's your favourite view from a train? We're now approaching Oshawa, the eastern terminus of GO Transit's Lakeshore East Line and often considered the eastern anchor of the Greater Toronto area. I'll have a video on GO Transit out later this year, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. Gilwood is our last stop, located around 15 minutes from Toronto's Union Station, and as such is only served as a drop-off only stop for our train. We're now on the home stretch to Toronto, and with that, it's time to reflect. Via Rail's venture sets have to be one of, if not the nicest trains to grace the rails of North America. Yes, they're not perfect, but once the full fleet has replaced the legacy corridor trains, they'll undoubtedly make Canadian rail travel a much more pleasant experience despite Via Rail's airline practices. It's not often many trains in North America are able to meet the standards of European ones, but Via Rail won me over with these trains and I can't wait to travel on them again in the future. That being said, my fixed business class ticket 2 months in advance cost me $206 Canadian and 90 cents, which includes the $7 seat selector fee. This is around £112, which I think is fair for a 5.5 hour journey in business class given what you get, but the baggage policies associated with this aren't appropriate. Please sort this Via Rail. With the CN Tower in full view, we're now approaching Toronto, where we find ourselves coming to a halt for around 10 to 15 minutes to wait for a platform to clear, which is absolutely typical. We eventually pull into Toronto's Union Station with a delay of 18 minutes.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Now you've heard from me, I want to hear from you. What did you think of the Via Rail venture sets? Have you travelled on them before, or any of Via's other corridor fleet? What were your experiences? Let me know in the comments. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like and share it if you did to aid the channel's growth, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more content such as this weekly. I'm now off to check into my hotel ahead of doing some sightseeing later. Thanks so much for coming with me on this trip, and I look forward to bringing you with me on my next one.